dizer, mas às vezes...
Boa tarde a todos. Eu estou saudando todos os alunos e professores que estão aqui na Sala Guerra Peixe, presencialmente, e todo mundo que está nos ouvindo no canal do Instituto Villa-Lobos, no YouTube, como um programa da Mostra Virtual Permanente do Instituto Villa-Lobos. Gostaria de agradecer antecipadamente o professor Sérgio Barrenechea, o nosso estudante que está aqui, o Vitor, que é bolsista e que está ajudando na transmissão. André Grabois também está assessorando. Professor Marcos Lucas, professor Arthur Campela, professor Avelino Romero, que está aqui também com as turmas de Harmonia 3, História da Música, e é um prazer estarmos recebendo aqui, de forma online, o professor Federico Favali, diretamente de sua residência, mas representando o Conservatório de Alesandria, na Itália, e eu vou apresentar o currículo dele em português para vocês conhecerem primeiramente. A música do compositor italiano Federico Favali recebeu prêmios internacionais, sendo aclamada e tocada em todo o mundo por muitos conjuntos notáveis, como Birmingham Contemporary Music Group e Lontano Ensemble. Seu catálogo inclui música vocal, ópera, composições para instrumento solo e música para conjunto e orquestra. Em 2014, recebeu uma encomenda do Teatro del Giglio de Lucca, na Itália, para a ópera de câmara A Queda da Casa de Usher. Em 2015, foi convidado para o Festival Internacional de Música Contemporânea de Daegu, Coreia do Sul. E em 2016, para o Festival Cross Currents, em Birmingham, no Reino Unido. Em 2017 e 2019, liderou pesquisas na Fundação Giorgio Tini, em Veneza. Ele também atua como musicólogo, concentrando-se principalmente na análise de música contemporânea. Formou-se em piano em Lucca e musicologia na Universidade de Bolonha, na Itália. Estudou composição na Itália, Inglaterra, Argentina e Estados Unidos. Eu gostaria também de saudar a nossa aluna em comum, que foi a Nabila Trindade, que atualmente estuda mestrado no Conservatório. A Nabila Trindade participou do nosso projeto de extensão, o conjunto de ópera barroca, do grupo de ópera barroca da Unirio. E entre 2014 entre 2013 e 2015, eu fazia a preparação vocal desses cantores, e a Nabila, que é uma mezzo-soprano e que está fazendo esse mestrado na Itália, também sendo orientada pelo professor Favali, ela que fez esse contato do professor conosco. Então, é importante vocês entenderem como a universidade, através de vários canais, podem proporcionar, anos depois, um contato internacional a esse nível. A professora Carol McDavid acabou de entrar. Depois eu quero mostrar para o professor Favali como a nossa sala está cheia.
Okay, thank you. It's a great honor. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Favali, and you can. It's a great honor, and you can start your conference, please.
Thank you, Doriana. Thank you all for this invitation. It's a real honor for me to have the possibility to talk about Puccini in front of you, about the harmony of Puccini in front of you and in such a prestigious university. Yes, Nabila was the link between me and you, and I'm very happy to have this possibility. And I hope it's only the first collaboration of a long series. As you can see from the title, I'm going to talk about the harmony in Puccini and more in deep about the evolution of harmony in the music of Giacomo Puccini. Because, as you can guess, during the life of a composer, there is an evolution of his way to deal with harmony and with many other elements of the musical syntax. So it's possible to show a way in which Puccini developed his use of harmony. And indeed, I must say, it's a very, it's a very interesting journey, I would say, for many reasons. I'm going to talk about some of them in this time. So first of all, be patient with me, because in this short amount of time, I will try to summarize the main characteristics of this evolution. As you can easily imagine, it's a very complex process, and one could dedicate many hours to its study. But still, it's important to talk even briefly about this happening. So the aims of this lecture are, first of all, to put Giacomo Puccini in a certain context. I mean, the time in which he lived, which were his professors, and where he studied harmony. And first of all, also how he studied harmony, because I think it's very important in order to show how his use of harmony has changed while he became a professional composer, of course. So I will talk about the evolution of harmony in a very general way, taking into account the specific period, so the years between the 18th century and the 20th century, which is a very, very interesting period for the harmony in general, because it changes a lot and also quickly. Then I will talk about how Puccini was in contact with these changes, and how the evolution of the harmony in his music has become a very interesting fact of his art. Of course, I will show you some examples without bothering you, no worries. And then I will close with some notes, I would say, something we can say to keep going and to develop these studies. But first of all, let me clarify one very important aspect. I can say, a very peculiar figure, because I am between musicology and composition. I mean, I work both as a composer and as a musicologist. Of course, as a musicologist, as Doriana said, my main focus is on the analysis of contemporary music. As a composer, I write music for several types of ensembles, so instrument, small ensemble, large ensemble, vocal music, opera, and so on. Trying to use, a very personal language, very personal choices, to say the times we are living, so to speak. I know that it can be seen as a very, very generic and also romantic expression. I didn't want it. My aim was just to present my peculiar figure in between musicology and composition. But one of the characteristics of my figure is that I was born in Tuscany, and I grew up and studied in Lucca. Now, when I say Lucca, maybe you immediately understand the beautiful small town characterized by two aspects: the medieval walls that surround the older part of the city, and you can walk on them. It's a beautiful walk. And the second aspect is Puccini, because the name of Puccini is strictly connected to this town, which is my hometown. So I'm from Lucca, and it's a very particular case, I would say, and also very interesting aspect of the city, that in such a small town that is nowadays around 90,000 inhabitants, many composers were born during the centuries, of course. So I can say that this small town has a very great and very important also musical tradition. This tradition is made by composers or families of musicians that worked in this town, or that were born in the town and that went abroad for several reasons, mainly financial reasons, as you can guess. Starting from the 17th century, I can quote the Dorati family and the Guami family. These were two very important family of musicians. The Dorati family, from the Dorati family, became Niccolao Dorati, a trombonist that is the first composer from Lucca, the first one that we know, basically. Of course, it's impossible to state without any doubt that there wasn't anyone before him. Simply, we don't have documents. We don't have any proof. So Niccolao Dorati is the very first composer from Lucca, and he with his family, I mean, his father, his grandfather, and then his sons, worked for the diocese of Lucca. Mainly, they created music to be performed in the cathedral. I must say that we have
Federico,
yes.
just a minute. Quem não estiver entendendo, de repente a gente interrompe um pouquinho para explicar um pouco do que ele está falando. Seria bom, né? Sim, né?
Okay, I will wait. Okay, I will wait.
Just some students don't understand very well the English, and we will translate and piece by piece. Sorry for interrupt you, but
No problem.
yeah, just to resume in Portuguese what you explained to us till there,
Yes.
till here.
Tell me when I can go on. I will wait here.
E, na verdade, no século XIX, ele falou que é muito importante, né? E isso ele vai abordar com mais detalhe. E ele agora está falando da cidade de Lucca, que é a cidade onde ele nasceu e estudou, que é uma cidade com uma grande tradição musical, e a cidade também de Puccini.
Dorati, né? E a família Dorati.
E agora está começando a falar sobre músicos eminentes que nasceram nessa cidade. Está falando sobre um trombonista que nasceu nessa cidade, pertencente a essas duas famílias com tradição musical, que é a família Dorati e a família Guami. Ele está falando sobre isso nesse momento.
Que é?
Iniciaram uma tradição.
Iniciar a tradição.
A gente vai assim, né? Cada um vai traduzindo um pouco e a gente vai respondendo.
Okay, Federico. Yeah, we can go piece by piece, just
yes.
to understand.
No problem.
Also, okay, thank you.
No problem. Now, the second family is the Guami family. The Guami family was a very important musical family of Lucca. The most important member of the family was Joseffo Guami, that studied with Joseffo Zarlino, a very important composer. Joseffo Guami was organist in the Cathedral of San Marco in Venice. So for that time was the highest position for an organist and for a musician in general. He was also a composer and he wrote pieces for organ and pieces for choir, motets. Last years of his life, he came back to Lucca and he worked as organist in the Cathedral of Lucca, which is a beautiful place. If you want to translate.
Marcos em Veneza, que era a máxima posição para um músico naquela época, e no final da vida ele volta para Lucca para tocar na Catedral de Lucca.
Yes.
And then we have a long list, but don't worry, I won't talk about all these of very famous composer. All of you know Luigi Boccherini, which was a very important cellist. He spent the biggest part of his life in Madrid, Spain. And then Carlo Angeloni, who was a very important local composer, and as we will see in a while, he was one of the teachers of Giacomo Puccini. Then Alfredo Catalani, that was a close friend of Puccini. He was a composer too. They studied in Milan 3 years together, and they shared the same room in a house, as an accommodation. I mean, so they had a very, very strong friendship. Okay, if you wanna translate.
Que já foi diretamente professor de Puccini, Catalani mais próximo ainda de Puccini, da família de Puccini.
E que o Boccherini ele passou a maior parte da vida dele quando estava morando em Madrid.
Okay. Then we arrive at the most famous family, which is the Puccini family. Of course, Giacomo is the most famous member of the family, but he was just the last ring of a long chain. In fact, his father, Michele, was a great teacher of harmony and counterpoint composition in the local school of music. He wrote a lot of music. Then Domenico Puccini, Antonio Puccini, Michele Puccini were grandfather, grand-grandfather, and so on. They were all members of this important family. Then we have another important family, which is the Luporini family, with Gaetano Luporini, the very first important member of this family. Gaetano Luporini was a student of Michele Puccini. And then we have his nephew, Gaetano Gianni Luporini, who passed away like 2-3 years ago. Okay, if you wanna tell me when I can go on.
Compositor, vai ter professor de harmonia, de composição, acho que Michele Puccini, tinha o Domenico Puccini, Antônio Puccini, e depois o Luparini, que já é um aluno de Puccini, e aí parece que acho que o filho desse cara, talvez o neto, morreu há muito pouco tempo. Então,
As gerações.
sim.
Okay, and now you can see the dots at the end, because this great musical tradition is still going on. So it's not finished. I'm a composer, and I'm the last part of this glorious tradition, but I'm not the only one. There are there are several other composers. The interesting aspect is that in such a small town, so many composers were born throughout the centuries. And you can ask, is there a sort of link to merge and to mix all these musicians? Well, it's not an easy question. I would say that especially in the last part of this list, what can be seen as a link is the theatrical element in the music, both in the operas and in the instrumental music. There are, in fact, theatrical elements, theatrical gestures, I would say, in the music that characterize this tradition from this small town. Okay, then tell me when you're ready.
Ainda está se dando, e ele se considera dentro desse movimento, e ele pergunta, ele fala, será que existe uma ligação, um link entre por que tantos músicos notáveis nasceram nessa cidade? Falou que não é uma de resposta muito fácil, mas que tem uma coisa que dá para perceber que é um elemento teatral dentro da composição, tanto instrumental quanto de ópera, onde ele fala de um gesto teatral nas composições.
Okay. Now, let's move on. And let's talk about the most famous composer from Lucca, which is, of course, Giacomo Puccini. So first of all, I want to talk briefly about some aspects of his life. Of course, there are wonderful biographies of Puccini. I can recommend you the one by Dieter Schickling. Giacomo Puccini was a German author who passed away 2-3 years ago, and in my opinion, he wrote the most complete biography of Puccini, talking about the music, yes, of course, but also talking a lot also about the man, because even from a psychological point of view, it's a very, very interesting figure to study. Giacomo was born in Lucca on 22nd December 1858. He started to study music with his uncle, Fortunato Maggi, and then with Carlo Angeloni, as I said, and he got his first diploma in composition in 1880. Then he moved to Milan to get another diploma, to be in a most prestigious environment, even to develop connections. So he spent 3 years at the Conservatorio of Milan, and his last piece was a Capriccio Sinfonico that was premiered on 13th of July 1883. In these years, he also started a very problematic relationship with a woman, Elvira Geminiani, and in 1886, their son, Antonio Puccini, was born in Monza, which is a city near Milan. I said very problematic because, as you all know, Elvira was already married with another man, so for that time it was a big trouble. Okay. Okay, if you want to translate until here, I don't want to. Then I will keep going.
Gráficos, eu perdi um pouquinho o início, mas ele chega a Milão em 1880, passa 3 anos no Conservatório, compõe o Capricho Sinfônico em 1883, que acho que é uma peça, talvez a primeira mais famosa, pelo que eu entendi. Tem uma questão, acho que conjugal problemática, porque, enfim, na época não podia separar, e acho que ele ia se separar, ou tinha uma outra relação, e tem um filho em 1886.
Okay. He had economic problems until Edgar, his second opera. Then from Manolesco on, basically he became rich. He became a very rich man. And of course this changes his life, no? Because he could buy wonderful dresses to wear. He could buy several cars, boats, and also several houses, all of them in Tuscany. So the most famous one was in Torre del Lago, the most beloved house of his life, of course. Then he spent the last 3 years of his life in a villa in Viareggio, which is 5 kilometers from Torre del Lago, so pretty close. Then he had a house in Chiatri, which is a small village on a hill, just the opposite side of Torre del Lago. And there is a lake in the middle, Lake of Massaciucoli. He rebought the house in which he was born, that was sold to fix some economic issues in the past. And then a very, very small house in Maremma, the southern part of Tuscany, to hunt. Okay, he was an hunter. Because there was a very, very good place to go around and hunt. So several houses that could demonstrate, a welfare. It was rich, so it could live at a certain level. Ok?
Bom, ele fica rico, enfim, fica famoso e rico, e compra, enfim, roupas, carros, casas, tudo na Toscana. Perdi ali os detalhes de nomes de cidades, de onde ele morre nos últimos 3 anos de vida, mas ele caçava, enfim, então ele conquistou uma posição social assim, meio ostentadora, assim, digamos.
As I said, he wrote several operas, and all of them was a success, except for some of them the premiere. For example, Madama Butterfly, as you know, was not a success on the premiere, but after 3 months he changed the acts and was a success indeed. So his operas were performed all over the world of that time. So United States, all Europe, South America. He got cancer at a certain point because he smoked too much, almost 90 cigarettes per day. And the cigarettes at that time were very different from cigarettes we have today. And so he passed away. He was only 66. He passed away on the 29th of November of 1924. Being a close friend of Arturo Toscanini, he was buried in the family chapel of Toscanini in the cemetery of Milan. And after 2 years, he was translated in Torre del Lago. And now he's buried in Torre del Lago with other members of the family.
Diego, acho que o som não está
Tá
excelente.
meio falhando.
Eu acho que eles falam da morte, tá só garganta. Eu estou enterrado com essa
Ele fumava muito, fumava 90 cigarros por dia. E teve câncer e morreu jovem.
Era muito amigo do Toscanini, então foi enterrado na mesma capoeira, na mesma região.
Eu juro, eu tenho. Não, é porque ele morreu em 1926.
Com 66 anos.
Com 66 anos. Pode continuar.
Ok?
Okay. As you may know, this is a very special year because it's the 10th anniversary of his death. So all over the world there are many ceremonies, conferences, and many operas will be performed to celebrate this special anniversary. And here, people is working to restore some of these houses and to make them permanent museums, which is great because until now they were closed. I mean, some of them, not all of them. And it was a big problem. Now, let me tell you something about Michele Puccini, his father, because he was a very important figure for you. First of all, he spent just few years with him because Michele passed away when Giacomo was 5. But Michele had a very, very big musical library, and Giacomo grew up in this musical library. So he had many books, not several, many books to study. Michele was mainly a composer and a teacher. I would say mainly a teacher. He was famous as a teacher, a very, very good teacher of harmony, counterpoint, and composition.
Michele Puccini tinha uma biblioteca musical enorme em casa, muitos e muitos livros que o Puccini pôde acessar desde muito cedo. E o pai dele era compositor e um professor famoso de harmonia, contraponto e composição.
E ele falou também que vão fazer agora tantos anos da morte dele, por isso tem muitas pessoas homenageando ele agora, não sei quantos anos falando, 100 anos. E que por isso que tem muita gente homenageando esse ano durante isso, com óperas, assim, ele está em vários museus esse ano, que foi bem importante, e que a memória dele continua.
Michele wrote several books for his students. I mean, he wrote a book of harmony that now is lost, unfortunately. That's terrible, I know. Forgive us. Then he wrote a practical course of counterpoint for his students in 1856. Two very important books can demonstrate how he taught harmony, this is lost, and counterpoint. As regard counterpoint, he wrote lines and numbers, and students had only to realize the chords following the numbers, the written numbers, okay? So they were a sort of guide. We call it basso numerato. His approach to harmony was very traditional, in the sense of the tradition. And even in his works, there are many, he uses harmony in a very, very traditional way. Tonal harmony in a traditional way. We can also say that albeit he uses harmony in a very traditional way, he could invent very, very nice melodies. Okay, so this is absolutely remarkable. And this is evident, especially in his only opera, in the only one, he wrote only one opera. This is Giovan Battista Cattani, written and performed in 1844 in Lucca, in a small theater in Lucca. He passed away in the same house where Giacomo was born, and as a teacher, he was a famous teacher, I said, he had many students, among them Carlo Angeloni, Fortunato Maggi, and many others.
O pai dele escreveu vários livros, né? O Tratado de Harmonia, que acho que está perdido, um livro de contraponto muito famoso, e ele trabalhava com baixo numerado, né? Com linhas e números indicando harmonia. Aí a abordagem harmônica dele era tradicional, é isso? Mas com melodias muito originais. Escreveu uma única ópera, que está escrito pelo nome de Giovan Battista Cattani. Teve muitos alunos, ele citou alguns nomes famosos, que Jerome e um outro, Fortunato, alguma coisa que não tem.
So, as I said, Giacomo had the book Corso Pratico di Contrappunto, and also the opera Giovan Battista Cattani, and also many other compositions written by Michele Puccini in his library, in his house in Torre del Lago, which is the house in which he spent the largest part of his life. So we can assume that he studied them. Okay, so he was in touch, and he knew very well the style of his father, and also the musical style of his father, of course, and also the language, the use of harmony that his father did in his works. This is such a miracle, I would say, because he couldn't remember his father because he was 5 when Michele passed away. He could feel as himself as a continuation of this glorious family, studying his music. This is a very important aspect of his formation. Now I'm going to spend some words about 2 extremely important figures for Giacomo. Fortunato Maggi, which was his first teacher of composition, and was his uncle, the brother of his mother, Albina, and Carlo Angeloni. Both of them have been students of Michele Puccini.
Estudou os livros do pai, conheceu o estilo harmônico do pai, apesar de não ter conhecido praticamente, lembrar praticamente do pai, acho que pôde estudar a obra e o estilo, e eu imagino que aplicar isso no trabalho dele. Aí ele começa a falar do Fortunato Maggi, que foi um aluno do pai dele, que era tio e...
No, Maggi was born in Lucca in 1839, and he got a diploma in composition in 1857. Then he worked as a teacher of harmony, organ, and then composition. Few years later, he was a very important member, honorary member, of an important society, the Società del Quartetto di Lucca, the Society of String Quartet of Lucca, which was a small society organizes concerts of music of the tradition, German composers, Austrian composers, and so on, and new music. So it was a very, this society had a very important social and musical role, okay, because it could present new works to the city. Then Fortunato left Lucca and was in La Spezia first, Ferrara, and then finally in Venice, when he worked at the Conservatorio of the city, Conservatorio of Venice, Benedetto Marcello. He was also dean of the Conservatory. And he passed away in Venice, as it's written in this slide. As I said, Fortunato Maggi was the very first teacher of composition of Giacomo, and there's a letter in which he says that Giacomo, yes, he is a good guy, but he is not a talented guy. I don't know why he saw him in this light. However, thanks God, the story went in a different way. Okay?
Tá, eu perdi essa última frase, você pegou? Uma coisa que ele falou?
O Maggi, pelo que eu entendi, falava que o Giacomo não era muito talentoso.
Isso. A gente fina, mas não era muito talentoso. Enfim, ele está dando dados bem biográficos, assim, falou que esse Maggi tem uma sociedade ali do quarteto de Lucca, vai para Veneza, depois volta para Lucca. Não, morre em Veneza. Ele falou isso, foi o primeiro professor de composição do Puccini.
Isso faz a ponte, né? Foi aluno do pai e professor
do filho.
Okay. The other important figure is Carlo Angeloni. Carlo Angeloni was born in 1834, of course, in Lucca. He was a pupil of Michele Puccini. He wrote 7 operas, okay? 6 opera seria and 1 opera buffa that has been lost. We don't have this opera buffa anymore. It's a shame, it's terrible. And I'm particularly sad talking about this, because this opera has been premiered in the small villa in which my parents come from, which is a small village near Lucca. Anyway, he was involved in the society of the Quartetto di Lucca as Maggi, and he was also a teacher at the Istituto Giovanni Puccini, which was the old Conservatorio of Lucca. He was a teacher of harmony and counterpoint. And he had Giacomo among his students. Now there's a letter in which the mother of Giacomo asked to Angeloni to be very severe, strict with the young boy, because he doesn't want to do many things. He's not, the first student of his class, let's say. So, it's clear that Giacomo had a very, very difficult character, even when he was very young. Angeloni passed away in Lucca in 1901, just 20 days 20 days before Verdi. 20 days before Giuseppe Verdi. Of course, Giuseppe Verdi in Milan, Angeloni in Lucca, there was a difference. Anyway, the use that Angeloni did of the harmony in his works was absolutely traditional, without any experimentation, I would say. He could also write very, very nice melodies, but as regards the harmony, it was just a simple tonal harmony, okay, without any experimentation. He used harmony in the ways he could learn harmony, without pushing it ahead. Okay.
Ele falou agora desse outro compositor que também foi aluno do pai do Puccini, do Giacomo, né? O Michele Puccini, né? E esse foi bastante prolífico, escreveu 7 óperas. Infelizmente, a maior parte dessas óperas está perdida, se não todas, acho que todas, né? Ele diz que se lamenta muito que esse fato tenha acontecido, porque essas óperas estrearam em um pequeno vilarejo perto de Lucca, onde os pais dele, o professor Favali, nasceram. Esse compositor também estava envolvido nessa sociedade de concerto, né, que eram vários compositores promovendo a música deles. E aí, em seguida, ensinou harmonia e contraponto no Instituto Giovanni Puccini de Lucca e morreu em 1901, poucos dias antes do nascimento de Giuseppe Verdi, outro compositor de ópera. Antes da morte, né? Do Verdi. Perdão. Que já foi em Milão, né?
Okay, this to talk about two main figures who taught harmony to Puccini. So very, very severe studies of harmony and the path of the tradition. This is very, very, very important to highlight. Now, as I said before, he spent his study period, let's say, between Lucca and Milan. In fact, Lucca was a student of Fortunato Maggi and Carlo Angeloni. Oh, sorry, one A is missing at the end of Lucca. I'm so sorry. I'm terrible, I know. And in Milan, at the Conservatorio of Milan, he was a student of Antonio Bazzini and Amilcare Ponchielli. Bazzini not so much, but Ponchielli was a pretty famous composer that wrote operas and so on. Interestingly enough, Antonio Bazzini, many years before Puccini, wrote an opera titled Turanda, which the same subject of Turandot, of the opera Turandot, okay? But I repeat, many years before Puccini, 40 years before, even more. So Giacomo was part of this great musical heritage, and albeit he experienced difficulties to stay in Milan, economic difficulties, of course, but he had the opportunity to have a huge musical library in Lucca, the library of all his family, and to spend years in a very dynamic place like Milan, and more in particular in a very important musical place as the Conservatorio of Milan. And this was seminal to be updated constantly on the new music.
O negócio da bateria e tal, mas eu acho que ele está falando ainda dos dois centros culturais importantes ali, né? Lucca e Milão, e da formação do time, né?
Eu entendi que o Antonio Bazzini ele fez uma ópera também, tipo, uma ópera talvez que veio antes de Turandot, que veio anos depois, né?
Okay, so this is one of the many characteristics Puccini had. He was extremely updated, extremely interested on the new music, meaning he went to concerts, he traveled a lot, and he knew he was attracted by being in touch with the directions of the new music. And of course, this had a very, very big impact also on his music. I can make a very, very important example here. You know that you can read in many books that Turandot hasn't been finished. I'm not sure if it's true 100%. What I know is that on April the 1st, 1924, Puccini was in Florence to listen Piero Lunaire by Schoenberg, and Schoenberg was there. And there are letters in which Schoenberg says that he met Puccini, so they talked together, they spent some minutes together and so on. And most important, Puccini heard the Piero Lunaire. My suggestion, my idea, is that from that date, Puccini understood that maybe music was going in a certain direction. And maybe something on Turandot could be rethought. Of course, he needed time, and because of his cancer, he didn't have time enough, unfortunately for us. But I think it's a very, very important episode that we should always keep in our mind. Okay, he was in touch with new music, and he heard Pierre Lunaire in April, so just 6-7 months before passing away. I think that this provoked several thoughts in his mind and also many ideas to develop and to work on, but he didn't have time.
Falou é bastante importante agora, eu acho, né? Porque ele fala da mudança de direção de Puccini, quando ele começou a falar sobre o Turador, né? Que ficou incompleto, e muitos livros dizem que
Puccini falou que ele, depois de assistir o Harmonia de Schoenberg, conheceu o Schoenberg em 24, e depois disso ele viu que a música estava indo numa outra direção que ele estava fazendo, e que pensou na ópera Turador e pensou que podia pensar numa maneira diferente, musicalmente, porque tinha tido essa antes, acho que do Puccini, né? E que ele queria repensar essa ópera numa linguagem musical nova. Só que ele não terminou, né? Ele morreu.
Ele viu a estreia dessa obra, que rolou em Berlim, em 1924, né? E ficou muito impactado, né? Porque é uma obra com uma linguagem diferente, mais intimista.
Mas acho que o Pirro é de 13. 13, né?
De 13,
por aí. 12, se não me engano. Porque a Sagração é de 13. Né? E aí ele, mas depois quando ele 24, ele estava para morrer, ele viu a ópera de 1924, ele ficou chocado e ele talvez, a partir daí, ele tivesse uma outra perspectiva de como continuar a sua própria obra. Mas ele já tinha percebido essa fissura estética entre as coisas que estavam vindo no futuro, do Schoenberg, e a maneira que ele concluiu.
So when we talk about the harmony in Puccini, we should always have in mind this aspect is a strong passion for the new music and for the study of the new music. All right, so he knew very well new ways to deal with harmony and to experiment with harmony. New many works of many contemporary composers. I think that we can argue that this fact had an impact on his mind and on his way to write music. So we should always have in mind. If you are interested in developing this argument, I strongly recommend you this book, Italian Tradition and Puccini. I'm not sure if it has been translated in Portuguese, but I would be happy if it will be in the future, and I can help as I can. Know if I can do something, please let me know. Okay, this author with a long surname, Nicholas. I can't see the surname because I have the written in the lowest part of my screen. However, this is a very, very important book, even to explain the name and the regions in which the manuals of harmony came from. Manuals of harmony that Puccini used both in Lucca and in Milan came from. So as I said before, the period between the 18th and the 19th and the 20th century has been characterized by many harmonic changes, and so we can sum up them saying that we started from a tonal system, going towards a widened tonality, suspended tonality, and finally a tonality. Okay, if you want to translate.
Está falando de experimentações harmônicas do trabalho do Puccini, falou um pouco desse livro, espero que seja traduzido em português, muito bom. E aí fala da questão das mudanças harmônicas, acho que vai de uma tonalidade para uma tonalidade suspensa e depois uma atonalidade. Acho que não expandida.
Depois suspensa e atonalidade.
Ah, tá.
Okay, you know what tonality is, so I won't waste time talking about tonality. Widened tonality, I could say that in this case there is still a tonic, but chords of the tonality have been used in another way. Connections among chords have been done in a new way, new experimental way. So it's not a tonality, strictly speaking, but still a sort of tonic is still recognizable. Suspended tonality is a place in which it's not possible anymore to see, to hear, and to see a tonic. Okay, in a part of the piece. Now, in other parts, of course, it is still possible. Then a tonality where it's not possible to recognize a tonic from the beginning to the end of a piece. I could also add a characteristic in Puccini, which is a sort of tonal shadow. Basically speaking, he doesn't affirm a tonality, but it gives a sort of shadow of tonality, a sort of parfum of tonality. And this is true in many of his operas, almost all of them, except the first two, I would say. It's a very interesting aspect. It's a very personal use of harmony, and so this fact can be seen as a personal use of harmony, the fact to use only the note of the tonic, for example, and not the whole chord, to give a sense of tonality, meaning sense of stability. And we will talk making commentary to the examples. Tell me when I can go.
O Professor
Yes.
Favali, we lost the battery of the computer, so
Okay.
the classroom will have to continue watching it on YouTube, and I'm streaming. But we're here because
Okay.
the battery of the computer died, so we don't have access to the screen anymore. They're trying to find a cable to see if we can plug it in, but I don't know if they will find it. But you can continue your talk because it's still going on YouTube Live.
Okay. So I will leave my email, and so you can email me whenever you want in order to make questions, ask for clarifications, and so on. So I'm here. I'm always.
Okay, sure. Yeah, if we have questions, we can connect. Okay.
But they're plugging into their phones right now to watch it. So
Okay, so can I keep going?
you can continue, but if there is any interruption that we need to do, I'll come back here and talk to you.
Okay.
Okay, great.
So,
Thanks.
yes. So here you have the list of the operas of Puccini. I go very briefly through. So, Le Villi, Edgar, Manon Lescaut, La Bohème, Tosca, Madama Butterfly. Just notice that Le Villi was his first opera, and Puccini with his friend put money together in order to rent the theater, Teatro del Verme in Milan for the premiere. And then from Edgar, Manon Lescaut, his publisher Ricordi, gave him the possibility to premiere these operas in very, very famous and prestigious theater, such as Teatro La Scala in Milan, Teatro Regio of Turin, and the Teatro Costanzi of Rome, which is now the opera house of Rome. So here you have the second part of the list: La Fanciulla del West, La Rondine, Trittico, and Turandot. I can state that in each of them, he carried on his research as regards harmony. So it's very interesting, this aspect. He carried on a continuous research in terms of harmony. And I think that we don't have time today, but maybe in the future, if we can organize a complete series of seminars, the most important and even interesting operas in this respect are, of course, La Fanciulla del West for some reason, Turandot for other reason, and Trittico, and still for other reasons. Now, this is a list, very, very short list. There are much more of some characteristics of the harmony in Puccini. So if we translate until here, please let me know if I can go on. Tell me when you're ready.
You, I think
okay.
we're using a cable now.
Segura aqui.
Yeah. If you can give us just 1 minute to see if we can connect up.
Yes. No problem.
Deixa a máquina mais novo, ele é tipo C. Ele é que nem carregador de celular mesmo. Tanto que o meu tá dando uma carga, só que não suficiente para deixar ele ligado, porque não é potente. Posso ver só? Não tem essa entrada aqui. É o USB-C esse computador, porque é o mais moderno. Às vezes a gente tem um USB-C para carregar iPhone. Não, então, o meu é, mas o meu não é potente, entendeu? Não tá tão seguro. Tem que ser o desse estilo assim, que é 150 watts. Bem seguro o computador. Se for só o USB, deve virar o USB.
Se talvez tivesse um adaptador para o USB-C, né?
I don't think we managed to get the cable, so you can continue. And I think probably we won't interrupt unless we get a cable. We won't interrupt for translation. We'll do it afterwards. Okay?
Okay, so I keep going freely. I will go on, okay?
And I think probably we won't interrupt unless we get a cable.
So, okay, I will go on. Okay, so these, as I said, these are characteristics of the harmony in Puccini. I would say the main ones. Of course, there are so many other aspects that deserve to be investigated in deep, but these are the the most evident, I would say. It started with a great use of chromaticism. So the Wagnerism was a tendency that it couldn't escape. No, it was a tendency that spread out in all Europe and it couldn't escape. And to quote a very, very famous example, I would say that the intermezzo of Manosco is one of his most famous Wagner style pieces, no? And it's wonderful. Of course, I've made also a personal reduction for solo piano that has been performed 3 or 4 months ago. So this tendency was well known in all Europe, and Puccini knew it very well. Given also the fact that being in Milan, he had the opportunity to attend to many operas at the Teatro alla Scala, and doing this, he could be in touch with this tendency because it was used by many other composers. Now, as regards the second point, we can also say that parallel chords are so famous and in the Puccini. I think it can be said that they come from a certain type of French tradition. And this is a very important aspect because put the light on the strong connection and love between Puccini and France as a country, and as a country, not as France as a cultural environment, and also as a musical environment. We have many examples of parallel chords in many of his operas. Just to quote one example, let's say the very beginning of the second act of La Bohème, for example, on the trumpets, and in many other places. By the way, Puccini knew very well, talking about the French composers and French tradition, Puccini knew very well the music of Debussy. He was a big lover of the music of Debussy. There are indeed many ostinatos in his music, and this can remind the ancient tool of the pedal, for example. Well, there are several examples. Talking about pedals, we have very interesting aspects because, for example, in many places, I can show you one in Turandot later. He made the use of the pedal in the upper voice. Now, this practice to use the pedal in the upper voice came from several operas, particularly by Catalani. So I think it can be seen as a sort of influence that Catalani had on him. Don't forget that they shared the room in Milan, so they knew each other very well. Well, chords with chromaticism. Well, there are also about these many examples. There are chords maybe belonging to the tradition, very triads, for example, very simple triads, for example, but colored, I would say, with a chromaticism. So they reached a new color as chords, as vertical encounters. And this new color could enlarge his palette of colors, no? And so it was very important characteristic. Now, another one that is used since the very first operas, such as La Bohème, is the defunctionalization of harmonic functions. As I said, it started from a very, very classic tonal environment, but very, very soon it started to also to defunctionalize some functions. How? For example, keep them for a long period of time. So you have a dominant, for example, but if this dominant doesn't go on a certain amount of time on the tonic, you don't perceive it as a dominant anymore, because the amount of time it's too long. So basically speaking, it is defunctionalized. You see a certain chord, certain number of notes together, but you can't see them or hear them, to say better, as a dominant. And this aspect is remarkable, for example, in the first act of La Bohème. No? In this case, you have many places in which harmonic functions are defunctionalized. And then the last one is for sure the pentatonic scale. Pentatonic scale is a way to go beyond tonality, I would say. So making a research on new ways to create melodies beyond tonalities, I can argue that pentatonic scale is definitely one of the favorite ways. Plus, they give a sort of a very special flavor to the melody, okay, because of the structure of the scale, of course. And this aspect is also very important because Puccini used them in precise points in precise contexts. When, for example, when he had a subject from that from the West, for example, no? From the East, for example, sorry. So Madame Butterfly, Turandot, among others. Here, I think it's the right place to quote a certain trouble that we are experiencing in these days. It's not, properly speaking, related to the Harmonia Puccini, but still, it's very important. I'm happy to quote it because you can develop your own thoughts, comments, and suggestions. So, which is the problem? The problem is that several articles in these days, in which cancel culture is growing, especially in the US, have been published saying that Puccini asking for, saying we are sorry because this opera shows elements that can be misunderstood by certain types of people. So, for example, if we talk about Madame Butterfly, we are sorry because the figure of Madame Butterfly can offend someone, because some Asian person can be offended seeing a poor young lady being a victim of a powerful American man. I know that we don't have time now, and it's not the right place to develop a discussion on this point, but I can argue that I totally disagree, because we can't keep the situation out of the context in which Puccini wrote it and thought about it. This is a big mistake, in my opinion, and it's also a risk. And I think that especially today we are dealing with this problem and this risk a lot. And then sorry for it. It's well, just simply a brief search on the internet you can do yourself will show how many articles have been published in these days on this argument, attacking Puccini and his work in this sense. Well, we could meet again if you are interested to talk about this point. Of course, I will leave you my email in the notes in a minute, and so you are able to write me and to talk and to ask questions, to share opinions, and so on. I must admit that my aim is not to spread a sort of truth, rather to share questions. I like to share questions to stimulate thought in the audience and then talking together. Okay, so if these aspects are clear, I prepare a couple examples from from operas of Puccini. So if you can tell me that you are hearing well my voice, I think we can keep going, listening to 2 examples. Can you follow me well? Can you follow me well? Can you? Yes.
Pouquinho,
I can't hear you.
trouxe
Okay.
não? Mas esse
Tá
tem som.
falando.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So I was just going to translate a little bit about what you just spoke about. Besides the harmony part. Oh, we're getting a cable.
Desculpa, gente. É muito difícil, porque eu tive que deixar meu carro na reitoria. Eu caminhei até lá, peguei o trânsito todo de Botafogo. Voltei. Não me deixaram estacionar aqui no estacionamento aqui, me impediram de entrar. Tudo isso vai fazendo delay. E claro, é minha culpa ter esquecido. Mas talvez essa é uma forma de dizer que os professores estão estressados, estão cansados, com sobrecarga de trabalho.
Okay, now I was just going to translate about what you were talking about, the questions that have been come up nowadays about criticisms of the subject matter of the operas, like Madama Butterfly. So I'm just going to translate a little bit while we get it set up here, okay?
Yes, I will leave my email here in the notes.
Sorry?
I will leave my email here in the notes.
Oh, okay.
Há muito em discussão hoje em dia que algumas óperas de Puccini, de outros compositores e outras músicas têm sido criticados porque pessoas podem ficar ofendidas com a imagem dos personagens. Ele deu exemplo como Madama Butterfly, que uma pessoa asiática pode ficar ofendida com o tratamento do personagem. E o abuso do americano. Então, o que ele estava dizendo é que às vezes a gente tem que ver isso em contexto também e entender que isso foi uma crítica que ele fez até quando ele fez essa obra, foi uma crítica.
Então, hoje em dia, a gente vê isso com outros olhos, e ele diz que está aberto à discussão se futuramente nós queremos abordar esse assunto sobre como se deve agir, né? Hoje em dia tem óperas de Mozart, de todos os compositores que dentro do período deles era visto como normal, que hoje em dia a gente pode ficar ofendido. Então, isso que ele estava falando. Já voltamos? Ok. Então, we are back.
Okay.
So I think we can see if the sound is okay. And you said you wanted to give some examples of operas, right?
Yes. I left here my email in the notes, so anyone can write me.
Oh, ok. Ele deixou
Question, comments.
o endereço de e-mail que depois de assistir a parte, né, pode escrever para ele, está totalmente aberto, qualquer dúvida, qualquer questão que vocês tenham. E aí, so these examples you're giving, you will tell what you're
Yes. Let's start with a very famous example, which is the Waltzer of Musetta. So I will share. Yes, I will share my. I will share the video, and I hope that you will be able to see it and to listen to it. Okay. Tell me something wrong, eh? Okay. Okay, very, very famous aria of Puccini. I'm sure you already knew it. One remarkable aspect is that it has been written as a piece for piano years before the Bohème, and then Puccini decided to insert in his opera. His new opera, which was the Bohème. Now I have here the score of this piece, and I'd like to show it, to share it, and make some comments together. The aspect to repeat a note before a single note, before starting the aria. He made it several times, but as I said before, it can be seen as not original, but something becoming from another tradition. Catalani, for example, did it several times in several areas of Vivaldi, for example, his most famous opera. Just to quote an example, right? Okay, so it can be seen also, a sort of distinction, a sort of mark of the tradition from Lucca. I didn't make any specific research to investigate if this characteristic can be found also in other operas written by composers from Lucca, but I will do in the future. Oh, tell me if you have to translate. Sorry if I'm going too fast. I'm okay. Can I go on? Sorry, Doriana, I'm so bad.
E que essa área foi originalmente uma peça de piano, que depois ele inseriu na ópera. Okay.
Okay, and so let's go at the very beginning. I think the tonality is not so clear. It's not clearly a E major. I can feel it in the fourth grade, the subdominant of the tonality. All right, plus the final this cadence on B, which of course is the dominant of E major, but I couldn't, I couldn't listen to the dominant in a very, very clear and strong way. Plus this single sound is repeated 3 times, as I said. Then suddenly these chords appear. The fact to double the melodic line with a single line from an instrument and a few notes as accompaniment is another characteristic of Puccini. In his later operas, he will follow the characteristic, keeping a long note below, a sort of pedal, I would say, of the line of the melody, not harmonically, but of the line of the melody. And this is another very important characteristic of his music. Okay, so again, the first grade, the 7th of the first grade, plus the subdominant here. The subdominant goes on a second grade, the 7th. And so where can I clearly hear a cadence to E major? Here, at the end of the phrase. But again, there is a very interesting characteristic here, that I can see the chord of the dominant here without 7th, so without threatening. No, sorry, not the dominant, the tonic here, sorry, the tonic here, followed by just the 5th grade and the first one, the tonic, not the whole chords on them. So it's interesting how at the end of the phrase, the texture is going to become thinner and thinner and thinner. And this has also an impact on the harmony, on the sense of harmony, on the perception of the harmony. Tell me if you have to translate.
Um pouco das características da escrita do Puccini, como a professora Cara falou, essa peça independente para canto e piano, e ele está falando de vários aspectos. Um deles é a textura instrumental. Ele falou que uma coisa característica do Puccini é ter essa textura, onde você tem na mão esquerda o acompanhamento, algumas figurações na mão direita e, ao mesmo tempo, algumas notas longas, como aquele dó sustenido ali do terceiro compasso, que dobra em parte a melodia. Então é um acompanhamento dividido em planos, né? A mão esquerda com baixo, acorde, uma voz no meio que dobra a melodia, uma voz superior. Então tem essa questão na textura, né, da harmonia. E às vezes, no final da frase ali, né, por exemplo, no final do segundo sistema, penúltimo compasso, ele faz a tônica numa cadência ali, aí depois faz simplesmente si, mi. A dominante tônica, mas sem o acorde de dominante, somente a fundamental.
Okay, let's move on to the second part of the aria. This time, the emphasis, I would say, is on the subdominant. We are still in E major, but here there's a big use of the subdominant, doubling the line of the singer with just a thin texture below. I think this is a very, very interesting aspect. Theatrically speaking, we could argue that this reflects the character of Musetta. No, she's a young lady. She's in love. She's happy. She's light as a character. I would say. No, it's interesting to see how the harmony can be used also in this theatrical way. And of course, in Puccini, we have a huge number of examples in this way. Still, we reach the dominant of A major, sorry, and then again another phrase 4+4, starting again and emphasizing the subdominant again, and even here we are in the subdominant again, just with a arrest the dominant of the subdominant and this focus. Now, which is very interesting, this part, the sort of reconduction and sort of link to the last part, to the final part of B, and the recapitulation of A, which starts here, as you can easily see. Again, this part that has some alterated chords ends on A, so the final chord of B section is still the subdominant of the main tonality of the piece, and indeed the main tonality A major comes suddenly at when A starts. So A is not preceded by its dominant. Now, this fact to delay the dominant, or even more to cancel the dominant before the tonic, of course, make the perception of tonality weaker. And this is a precise choice. This opera has been written in 1896, and at the time, of course, he was making experiments on the harmony, but he went much further in the following operas. No, so here we can't argue that we are in presence of a suspended tonality. Rather, I would say of a widened tonality, because we have the sense of tonality, but it's not so strong as we were familiar talking about the tonal period. Sorry if you have to translate them. Sorry. I always go too fast. Sorry, Doriana.
It's okay. We'll translate.
Eu entendi que ele agora está falando sobre aquela aspecto que ele já tinha falado, a relação do tempo em que se fica numa harmonia, né? Antes de mudar para uma nova harmonia. Ele chegou ali na região da subdominante, Lá maior, e ele vai ficar um bom tempo ali naquela região. E isso vai obscurecendo o sentido de tônica, né? Ali no segundo compasso, por exemplo, ele chega no Lá maior, antes ele tem o acorde de Mi com sétima, não, é bem quadro ali, né? Então ele está inclinando para o Lá maior e ele vai ficar um bom tempo, no 3x4 ali, nessa região de Lá maior.
Pois é, e além disso ele falou sobre características do personagem Musetta ser uma jovem que não é muito densa a textura do acompanhamento, então tinha às vezes somente a melodia dobrado com um acorde simples embaixo, e que isso era uma maneira de mostrar que era mais clara, mais transparente, mais leve, eu acho. E aí, e justamente nessa volta do tema, que é no tônico, ele termina subdominante, então ele não é preparado tão fortemente para dominante tônico, né? É uma coisa que é meio, o que ele falou de expandido, né? Ele não falou de suspenso, diz que a harmonia é meio esticado para um lado e aí depois volta a tônica.
All right, and then we have the recapitulation of A. I'd like to spend some words at for the very end, because here is the end of the aria, and it's important to affirm, the tonality in a certain way. But here it seems almost a weak affirmation of E, respect the ways we could hear in the previous opera. When I say previous opera, I'm talking about operas written just few years later, no? But Puccini indeed was a real contemporary. I think that being a contemporary is an aesthetic and artistic and philosophical choice. It doesn't depend on the time of the history. If you are interpreting the evolution of the harmony in a very personal way, you are in contemporary indeed. And I feel Puccini is still contemporary nowadays. Albeit we use a different language in our works, okay, but it's not a problem, right? It's not an issue. Now, interesting enough, here we also have a fourth ascending interval could remind us a certain flavor of dominant tonic relation. So dominant of the dominant could be, but no, it is harmonized in a different way. All right, so I can say that here we have sort of widened tonality. Of course, E is still the tonic clearly throughout the piece, no doubt on it. But the ways to affirm this tonic, it's definitely weaker. Plus, the texture reminds is the texture used, in a very theatrical way, and all these characteristics make this aria as we know. Okay, if you have some questions, please email me. Okay, I'm happy to answer as soon as possible. If you want to translate.
Não entendi muito bem esse final.
Você continuou falando da não afirmação da tônica.
Fala dessa.
Eu acho que ele estava tentando trazer para a visão do compositor contemporâneo que até hoje
é considerado
aceito como digamos, atual, dentro desses motivos técnicos que são motivos tradicionais, que precisam da tônica, da dominante da tônica para se reorganizarem, e Puccini suspende essa ideia, essa relação, e com isso, ele, na parte técnica, ele cria essas texturas, como ela falou muito bem, essa tonalidade não suspensa, mas estendida. Então, sem uma definição clara de pam, 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 mas uma coisa que passa de um modo ou outro. Mas eu acho que ele também está tentando colocar a ideia da contemporaneidade do Puccini cruzando na coisa teatral, na especificidade teatral da maneira como ele colocava os personagens em cena e como ele trabalhava a sua harmonia para que isso não ficasse tão carregado.
Porque tem a questão, a gente faz mais de 100 anos depois, a ópera ainda tem uma contemporaneidade, mas na época era atual, foi apresentado assim que ele compôs. Então, era a música contemporânea de ópera na época. Então, continua sendo.
Eu tenho uma pergunta.
Tá. Okay.
Okay.
We have a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
Não, isso assim, um pouco mais.
I can get out.
Hi. Depois eu
Hi.
traduzo. Hi. My question is very simple. You already spoke about the whole evolution of Puccini and the whole situation of how he was inserted in his time and everything. However, he was exactly in a time where music, as you said in the beginning of the talk, that music was passing radical changes, not only in terms of the extended tonality, not only in terms of like suspended tonality, atonality. So you see, you have in the beginning of the century, you have like, not to speak of Mahler, but to talk about like Debussy or Wagner, and all these other composers were really doing a revolution in the language. And Pierre Colonel was 1912, Le Sacre, Stravinsky, 1913, you know very well. And besides Dalla Piccola and other Italian composers who were, I mean, talking about how this whole story got to those guys later. But my question to you is like, I see Puccini a little bit, which is, I think it's amazing how he managed to get the spirit of Italian music and how much he managed to be contemporary because of his theatrical moves. But I see Puccini a little bit like a Gershwin somehow, like capturing the spirit of the time. And because he wants to hit the jackpot of like being accepted or liked at the same time, and being a little distance to throw himself in a more radical posture, having all of these guys, Strauss, Debussy, you name it, Fitzner, blah blah blah, all these people. So how do you see this? Let me just tell the people what I asked you. Eu estava falando para ele que, pô, no começo do século tinha todas essas correntes, essas coisas rolando, Stravinsky, Schoenberg, Barra e Strauss, e eles eram correntes que estavam realmente trabalhando com a distorção da linguagem. Então, como é que o cara, o Puccini, se ele se colocava no meio de tudo isso, eu vejo ele um pouco como Gershwin, que é aquele americanão que fazia Rhapsody in Blue, não sei o quê, pegava o espírito do tempo, é um cara genial, né, os dois, mas como é que ele está no meio desse terremoto e ele está ainda, entendeu, bem vestido, tranquilão e tal. Isso é uma coisa que eu queria que ele respondesse, assim. Ele foi jogado no meio desse tempo. Hoje em dia, por exemplo, a gente está numa coisa muito mais horizontal. O cara pode fazer um blues ali, um metal aqui, e a gente, onde transitar, a gente vai. Mas naquele tempo, a coisa era... Então, mas ele estava no meio dessas linguagens todas, no meio desse terremoto. Então, sorry, Mr. Favali, I was just...
No problem. No, it's very interesting. It's a very interesting question. Thank you. I can say that Puccini came from a certain musical tradition, and this musical tradition was characterized by the use of harmony in a certain way, in a very, very classical way. Of course, Debussy, for example, spent years, playing chamber music in a Chenonceau castle, so he knew very well, again, a certain romantic and classic tradition, and pushed the harmony far away from the place he saw it for the very first time. But Puccini was a completely different character. He had the idea that an opera, to involve the people and to receive claps of the people, to make this happen, the people should be involved. And to be involved, the people need two characteristics, basically speaking. One, melodies easily to remember. Two, characters in which I could find myself easily. For example, Madame Butterfly, all of us has been killed by a person we had our faith in, for example, and so on. No? So I think my sensation is that he used the harmony in a certain way without touching these two aspects. So he couldn't push too far away harmony, because this could crush the effect of the capacity of following the opera and to make the opera work. In fact, in the same years, Schoenberg wrote his works, Erwartung in 1911 or 12. I think he wrote in 1910. Puccini wrote La Fanciulla del West, and so on. But all this opera by Giacomo Puccini has this aspect that they present a clear experimentations as regards harmony, but they save this aspect to touch the heart of the public, and this is seminal for opera. In this sense, I could argue that the music of Schoenberg and also others is much more difficult to follow and to understand. Puccini reached your heart directly. Do you agree? I would like to talk about this aspect because I think it's very important.
O tratamento harmônico clássico. Aí deu um exemplo, acho que do Debussy, que acho que na coisa da música de câmara tocou muito, foi para esse caminho de expansão. E com o Puccini era diferente, porque ele queria envolver as pessoas, ele realmente queria tocar o coração do público, e para isso tinham duas características fundamentais, que eram melodias fáceis de lembrar, assim, que realmente pudessem ser lembradas, e personagens com que a gente pudesse se identificar. Aí acho que ele cita Madame Butterfly, se não me engano. Aí ele fala de algo que ele escreveu em 1910 ou 11, que eu também perdi.
O Elvato?
Não, isso foi Schoenberg.
Que aí, enfim, fala do Schoenberg como uma obra muito mais difícil e árida de compreender, de acessar. E de que ele realmente então queria tocar o coração das pessoas.
E ele disse que se alguém tiver mais algum comentário sobre isso, ele gostaria de discutir.
Eu tenho uma pergunta.
Então.
Espera aqui.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is André from Rio. My question is about this theatrical gesture that you are talking about in the harmonic approach. If there, I don't know if you can speak a little bit more about this. If you have a text to suggest for us to read, or if I don't know how. This is a topic that I have lots of interest in, so I would like to maybe Então eu perguntei sobre a questão do gesto teatral, do tratamento harmônico e se ele poderia falar um pouco mais sobre isso, enfim, se tem algum texto para sugerir para a gente, que é um assunto que me interessa muito. Assim.
Okay, thank you for this question. It's a very, very, very interesting question. I think all great composers for theater, but especially in Puccini, it's strong this feeling to write theatrical gesture. I mean, to write the vocal lines, not only as vocal lines, but also theatrical gestures. This depends on the intervals of the lines and so on. Now, as regards Puccini in particular, sorry. Moscow Karner, which was a very important musicology who wrote one of the very first books on Puccini, stated that his way to compose melody is like to compose a mosaic. So there are small cells, one juxtaposed to the others, and they all together makes the melody. It's not a whole line. The line is made by small cells. So if you are interested in this, please send me an email. I can send you a title of a book or an essay to read. I found very, very interested. This aspect to write theatrical gesture, so to write lines that can illustrate a word, for example, it's very effective in Puccini. Take the lines of the Walzer of Musetta, for example. They mainly goes down. But if you follow a public speaking course, what do they say? That when you speak, you want to say something with a certain strength, the line must go down. Because if you go up, it's an interrogative way. No? Will you come to Brazil soon? Hopefully. Okay, but I'm talking about Puccini now. I think this is a very interesting argument now. The lines of Musetta are mainly going down. Why? Because she's faithful, okay, that Rodolfo will come to her. She knows that she has a certain power as a woman. She's young, she's beautiful, and she knows that Rodolfo will come to her again. Okay, so because of this thought, you know, her psychology has a certain way, okay, to work, and the melodic line reflects this way. I think such a type of analysis in the music of Puccini are extremely interesting because he writes the lines of the characters according to their psychology much more than other. In this way, I think we can talk about a certain theatrical way to manage the vocal lines. But again, please write me an email. I will give you essays to read and can suggest you a book.
I was just going to translate quickly. Did you understand?
Sorry.
Tá. Então, ele está falando que nessa área ele dá de exemplo, ele fala mais sobre a fala, como a gente fala. Quando a gente fala alguma coisa, a gente deixa cair. Quando a gente deixa subir, é porque é uma pergunta. Então ele diz como ela está confiante, jovem, linda, maravilhosa, vai chamar Marcelo. Ela fala, a frase dela principal é descendente, né? Descendente. Quando então não é uma pergunta, ela não tem dúvida. Então a frase é assim. Então ele está falando sobre gesto teatral na melodia também, que é apoiado pelas harmonias. Ok.
Okay, I'm not sure if I don't think I have time for another area, but I want to say that I'm happy to answer to all your questions. So please write down my email and write me whenever you want.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
When we had that difficulty with the cable and we were watching on our phones, I think a lot of people missed a lot of the content particularly about the characteristics of harmony in Puccini. So I was just talking with Doriana. Maybe we can schedule another talk in which you go straight to the harmony and then you can give more musical examples. I think that would be interesting, particularly for the people that are here still now. And I think, I don't know, eu tô falando aqui, talvez ele possa fazer uma outra palestra e ir direto nas características da harmonia de Puccini e já dar mais exemplos musicais abordando essas características, talvez mais para frente.
Yes, it will be an honor for me. I will be in touch with Doriana. We will fix another date, and I will go straight to the harmony. For today, I just wanted to give a general view of the evolution of harmony, and I thought it was important to talk about the context. But next time we can go straight to the harmony.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much, Federico, Professor Federico.
Thank you. So looking forward.
Sorry for this technical delay or for this absence of my mind. Sorry.
I look forward to be with you again soon, and hopefully in person also soon.
Oh, thank you. Vou agradecer a presença de todos, dizer que está circulando uma lista de presença para vocês terem o certificado. And after I will send you to sign a certificate for each student here to certificate these 2 hours of conference. Muito obrigada pela compreensão. Desculpa as questões técnicas. Quero agradecer Victor, que é o musicista.
Tchau, Victor.
Ao professor Sérgio Barnechea, que fez toda a conexão através da plataforma StreamYard e que gerencia todos os eventos, ajuda na coordenação dos eventos da Mostra Virtual Permanente do IVL. Então, essa palestra estará gravada e acessível. Né? This conference, it will be accessible for everyone in the planet. Agradecer a professor Arthur Campella, professor Marcos Lucas, professor Avelino Romero, professora Carol McDevitt e meu orientando de mestrado André Grabois, que ajudou na tradução. Muito obrigada. Tchau, boa noite. Tenha bons sonhos. Have good dreams. It's 10 o'clock in Itália. 10 o'clock p.m. Okay.